Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday, February the 19th. And as we like to do once a week, we'll be chatting with our good friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda. And I'm going to set things up with Bill by telling him that it's 21 degrees here in what we like to call North Texas. It was like about 6 this morning. It felt like 0. So, Bill, we're joining you guys when it comes to having a winter. What do you think about that?
Well, welcome to the club, and it's such an honor to be a member of it. I mean, among the other gifts you're given is the flu and plunging sales because nobody wants to go out. Restaurants are suffering. Everything else is. It was really bitter this morning. I mean, and it predict more bitter cold over the weekend, and. People are very glum. They really are. They enough already, as they say. Enough.
Right.
We've had plenty of winter. How about a little spring? Now spring doesn't start until March 21st. So I
Right.
think that's a bit ahead. But now there was the talk also of the possibility of abandoning daylight savings time. Now I
Yeah.
don't have any idea why they would want to do that except publicity. But people love daylight savings time. They love when it ends, and
Right.
or begins rather begins.
Right.
And spring forward, fall back. But the temperature has been unusually cold in New York, and people are frozen as well as machines, but there is a decided effect on the spirit of the people. They want to say, let's go to Florida,
Right.
like the intelligent people do.
Right. Well, it reminds me, it's funny you say that because it reminds me of our first year in the United States. We came to the United States in September. So we had our first winter. And then in March, I remember one day there was or one Sunday, it went up to like 40, and people were literally walking outside in shorts.
Mm.
And I was just saying, wow, I guess that's what a little spring will do to you. People
Yeah,
just
yeah.
get a little excited. but but I think I can hear in your voice, and you probably can hear in mine that these temperatures do have an impact.
Oh yes, both of us are coughing away.
Yeah.
We're gonna have some show today. My wife was diagnosed today with the flu, even though she took a flu shot.
Yes.
It's all right. We're all doing the same thing.
Yes. Please pardon us, but we're fighting whatever's out there. We're both fighting it. And I even took a little Dayquil about an hour ago to prevent all of this. But anyway, here we are, and I just have my water here ready. Let me do this real quick, Bill. Get a little water.
Okay, take your
But
time.
anyway, of course, everything is all of this is because of climate change. If you haven't heard that theory before, it's all because of climate change. It's climate change is responsible whenever the climate changes. If it gets hot or cold, it's always climate change. So that's our very quick excuse for everything.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
But
anyway,
everybody, I mean, everybody is coughing and sneezing and wheezing,
right,
and people are afraid to uh, be around other people. It's
right.
having a profound effect, and I think that people are counting the days really for the beginning of spring, but in New York, that's an unsure date. It's supposed to be March 21st, but it never gets really warm in New York until May.
Well, the reality is that for me, I never really looked at the calendar so much as I said, if it's the start of the baseball season is spring. So I would always look forward to the baseball season because I knew that there would be better weather coming
Yeah.
in March. Of course, March is exhibition games, and then April the regular season. But anyway, Bill, a lot going on, lots to talk about today, big stories. But I want to begin in New York because New York is in the middle of a little dramatic show, to say the least. You've got the governor and the mayor of New York City. I understand that the governor is thinking about forcing the mayor out. I didn't know that the governor had that power, but I guess in New York she does. And then, of course, the possibility of former Governor Cuomo running for mayor of New York City, which does raise the question in my mind: what do you call a guy who used to be governor? Do they call him used to be governor, now Mr. Mayor? I don't know.
Well,
I always thought you kept your more senior title.
well, the thing about that in New York is that Cuomo was forced out because of a series of sex harassment charges.
Yes, I remember.
People talk about him being an easy run for New York mayor. I'm not so sure that's true. They say everybody knows his name. Yeah, everybody knew Al Capone's name also. I mean, you know, he why did they simply assume? Well, everybody knows his name, and he was a good governor, and after all, the city is in trouble. But I doubt very much of the women in the Democratic Party will accept this kind of a comeback,
Right.
where the guy is given the mayoralty of New York, get another guy out who's also under charges. I mean, isn't it amazing what we're talking about?
It is. No, it is. And what amazes me is how little talent. I mean, where's the bench that there would be even another Democrat? Forget Republicans; they don't have much of a bench. But you would think that there'd be somebody better than Cuomo in the bench or on the bench for the Democrats. Now she wants to get rid of. This is the rumor. This is what we hear. She wants to get rid of the governor. Wants to get rid of the mayor because the mayor wants to work with President Trump when it comes to immigration.
That's right.
That's apparent. That's what we're hearing. Is that what you're saying there?
Well, that apparently is true, that he does want to work with the president.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's sincere or not, I don't know, but he works with him reasonably well. And I think that the mayor is in a certain amount of trouble, or the number with some charges against him.
Right.
That some are serious, most are probably unserious, but he is in a lot of trouble, and that you do hear these chants of getting the mayor out, and in which case the I forgot the name of the office, but it is the one where that supplies the new mayor for a time, if the real mayor is knocked out, because we have all kinds of people available who are sufficiently corrupt to do this.
That's
I mean, this is really where the talent has been. So, for example, if the mayor resigns and the deputy mayors have all resigned, the person who becomes mayor is a Marxist. I mean, he's a real lefty. He's way out there. I mean, we may New York City might be called Castro City. It's possible because a lot of people on the city council are themselves hardened leftists.
right.
So it could turn out to be an absolute mess. It really
Yes.
could.
Isn't it amazing to me, now that you mentioned Castro City, Portland is having the same problem, I understand. Seattle, not too much different. Minneapolis. Isn't that amazing how all these liberals who run these cities look forward or look up to complete failed regimes?
Oh, yes.
I mean, they admire Cuba for what? For no reason other than maybe they just like the ideology, or they like to wear the little.
It's the ideology, the
Yeah.
idea that we have oppressed Cuba, and if we can liberate Cuba, we can liberate New York. And it's very much there, but the press doesn't like to use words like Marxist.
Yeah.
They really don't. They think they'll be called McCarthyites.
Right. That's what progressive. That's the word
Progressive.
that is in
That's the
style
word they
right now.
like. That's exactly
Progressive, but I mean, it's a mess what's going on in New York now. I thought maybe Andrew Cuomo was thinking about becoming the mayor of New York and becoming tough on crime and tough on, the guy who fixes New York and then turn around and, let's say, run for president in 1928 or maybe 1932 or 2028, 2032, which is hard to believe that we're even talking about 2032. That's 100 years after FDR. But I mean, that's amazing that the calendar has flown like that. But anyway, do you think that he would? First of all, do you think he win? And number two, if he were to win, do you think he could be the candidate for president in 2028? Because they don't really have anybody else, Bill.
Well, you mean Cuomo?
Yeah, Andrew Cuomo.
I can't imagine that he would be the candidate for president.
Okay.
I mean, the charges against him involve sexual harassment.
Okay.
The Democratic Party is not going to suddenly ignore those things when, in fact, it's championed them over the years. I mean, you're not talking about somebody who's so loved that the party has to have him. You're talking about a guy who got thrown out.
Right, and he's not really like you say, he's not a lovable guy.
No,
it's at least Clinton had a nice personality.
Yes,
but yeah, I was very surprised that a guy who was the former governor would now want to be the mayor. That's why I was joking. What would be the title? What would you call this guy? I mean, you call him Mr. Governor, now the mayor. I mean, it's just a crazy thing. You don't see that. You don't see that. I'm not familiar with anybody who's going from governor to mayor, even in a big state like New York. Now, somebody went from governor to the Supreme Court, or from president to the Supreme Court, and I forgot who that was. A former president over 100 years ago.
William Howard Taft.
Yes, he went from being president to being
Chief Justice.
Chief Justice. I mean, I guess that's a pretty important switch, but anyway. But New York is just right now so messed up. Everything. And then the other issue that we hear, Bill, I want to get your reaction to this. The other issue that we hear is that if the governor were to get rid of an African-American mayor, there could be an identity politics problem there.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. You have the state attorney general, Letitia James, who presumably will be a candidate for governor. And, she would stand behind the people who took out Cuomo, because some of them were black women, and you could have a racial clash, and you could have a cultural clash. On the other hand, if some candidate came in who had good credentials and had not spent any time in jail, that person might. People have spoken, for example, about a member of the Trump family, like Trump Jr., which is probably not a bad idea, except you're not talking about the Roosevelts, It's the Trumps, and they're not. It's New York, and New York is a Democratic city, and I don't think there's a member of the family who's that overwhelmingly popular that that person could run and easily win the mayoralty.
Do they even live there? That was the other thing I was thinking. I mean, do any of the Trump children or sons, Ivanka doesn't live there, does she?
I don't think so. I think she lives in New Jersey.
I think they've all moved out. I was thinking
that's an easy problem to solve. That's happened before. If they have a connection, they're no longer connected to a city, they could move back in and establish residency pretty fast.
Yeah.
But nobody is asking for Cuomo. I mean, it's so typical of the Democratic Party. Is there this great wanting for Andy? I mean, that the city will only be saved if a sex harasser gets into office.
Well, and there's also the issue of the clinics. Weren't there some clinics that he had a problem with?
Yes.
Some. I mean, there were lots of things that got him in trouble. Not just the sexual harassment, as I recall. That may have been the most publicized, but there was something going on too with people who were left to die in clinics, if I recall, something like that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it had to do with old people's homes.
Right. I remember that. Yeah.
People were not treated the way they were supposed to be.
Yeah, I remember something like that, and so I'm not planning to to send any money to the Cuomo for president campaign. I think
No,
I'll scratch that one.
yeah, and even with the Cuomos, you don't know who the first lady's going to be, and,
Right,
and she may not know who she's going to be.
right. Yeah, well, at least he'll have a brother with a TV show.
That's
That he will have. And
what are you what are you referring to?
well, doesn't he have a brother, Chris Cuomo, who is on TV?
Oh, but he got thrown off. The charges against him.
Oh, okay, all right. So it's just
So
a
he's
bad.
gone too. He apparently was a bad boy also. Yes, at one time he was a prominent correspondent on CNN, but apparently he too strayed from the straight and narrow. So
Well, where is Mario when we need him?
well, he's dead.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah, where is Mario when we need him? Or his lovely wife? What was her name? He did have a very nice wife. I remember
yes he
her.
was.
I remember her on TV a few times. So, all right. So we'll just scratch the idea of the Cuomos and and concentrate on the battle between the governor and the mayor, and we'll see who wins. Who do you think is going to win that battle, Bill?
Oh, between the governor and the way, I have absolutely no idea because
Yeah.
the winner will probably be decided by Donald Trump. Because nobody really gives a damn what the governor of New York,
Right.
Mayor Hochul or Hochul or whatever
Oh,
they call
yeah.
her. She's got her own set of problems. So,
Right.
I mean, this is not a state that today has any glamour or style. It's not like the old New York. I mean,
Mhm.
this is a lot like a state that has been removed from the country for medical reasons.
Right. Well, the state of FDR, the state of Wilkie, wasn't Wilkie also a former governor of New York when he ran
No,
for
I think
president?
he was Ohio.
Ohio. Okay. Well, all right. So we'll wait and see what happens between the governor and the mayor. But I didn't realize that the governor could replace the mayor of a city, an elected mayor of a city. That is, I don't think other states do that. I'm not familiar with that here in Texas or other state. Maybe I'm wrong, but that is a very unique power that the governor of New York has compared to other states.
Yeah. Well, I don't know
Hmm.
exactly what the rules are because my interest in the governorship of New York is about as strong as my interest in glue. You know.
Right. Well, we wish you well because the state really could use a little leadership.
Oh, they
And
could use almost anything.
Letitia James would not be a good prescription.
No, Letitia James is a socialist
Yes.
who ran for governor as a candidate of what they call the Working People's Party, meaning nobody else in New York worked.
That's right.
She was the leader of those who worked.
Right. Well, I did hear this theory. One last thought here about the mayor and the problems with the governor. Bill O'Reilly, is from New York, knows the city quite well, said that he believes that the reason that the governor was not indicted or the mayor was not indicted by the DOJ is because he gave up some very important information about the district attorney and the attorney general
Yes.
that will be used against them sometime soon. Now, that's he said he couldn't prove it, but he felt very comfortable that that was the case. So I don't know. Maybe Letitia James has a few surprises down the road, Bill.
Well, I don't think she's capable of surprising anyone, but she is capable of doing things that are so ridiculous. I mean, the place of an attorney general in New York is in her office,
Right.
prosecuting people. But during the Trump trials, which she initiated to get Donald Trump, and she promised she would do it, she was at the courthouse every day,
Right.
where she absolutely shouldn't be. But look, these are absolutely great opportunities for good Republican candidates. If the Republicans could come up
Yeah.
with a basket of good candidates, they could control New York. It
Well,
was not long before Governor Pataki served here as a Republican governor.
and he did a good job, as I
Did a
recall.
good job. Was well
Yeah.
regarded.
And then there's Lee Zeldin, who's running the EPA right now. That would
Yes.
be a very tough change for him. That would be my choice if I was a New York Republican. I'd be contacting Lee Zeldin because I
Yeah.
think he would be a great candidate. Well, the other big story, Bill, is the situation. I call it the show because it is really so interesting. President Trump and Musk, Elon Musk, have got people going nuts, and at the same time they keep coming up with some very interesting information, like somebody 180 years old getting a social security check, or something like that.
Well,
I mean,
it's not far from that.
I mean, and even people say, well, it's only one or two. It's actually more than one or two. It's almost 1,000 people
Oh, yes.
who are getting them. So either they have very bad workers who do data entry at the Social Security Administration building, who, when they're putting in the data, instead of putting in, that somebody was born in 1950, they mistakenly put in 1850 or something,
Yes.
and then these people are getting their checks legal. I mean, it's they're supposed to be getting checks, but the information is wrong about their date of birth. Either that's the explanation, or just pure incompetence, or I would hate to think that there's some corruption involved, Bill.
Corrupt in New York, corruption? Oh, I mean,
I mean, in the whole country, this would be the whole country, because we're talking about Social Security checks. There was a funny cartoon saying something like, "My name is Harry James, and I was born when Abraham Lincoln was president. I voted for Grover Cleveland," or something like that. "I served in the Spanish-American War. My kids served in World War I, and I continue to get my Social Security checks." Something like that, about just how crazy some of these examples
oh,
are.
some of them are apparently on a federal basis. Um, there are millions and millions of these cases. People
Yes,
who died 60 years ago are still getting their Social Security checks.
but mechanically that can happen in
Oh,
this
yes.
sense, Bill. Because of direct deposit. Somebody dies, they continue to get their checks. The spouse doesn't tell because I remember when my father passed away, my sister went down to the security agency or office, and they literally they informed them my father passed away, and they take you off the records or
Yes.
whatever else happens. And I assume most people do that. Most good people do that when their husband or their wife or their father or mother, whatever, passed away. They go down there and they change it. But if you don't change it, and you'll still get the check forever. I mean,
That's
there's no
right.
no no way to stop it.
That's right. I don't know. I don't know if the Social Security Administration has an annual certification system, but I don't think they do. I think they
Well,
did.
you would think they've got somebody like a quality control department that every year they say, okay, everybody getting a check over 90 years old, let's make sure that they're alive. And they call your house and they say, hey, we're looking for James Smith. Is he around? And someone says, oh no, he passed away 3 years ago. Oh, okay, because we still list him in the social. Yeah, I'm being facetious, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
No, sure.
I mean, if that is to me just incompetence on the part of.
And it's also robbery. I mean, it's a crime.
Sure.
You're stealing from the government.
Well, especially if somebody's getting that money. Now, if the
Yes,
money is going into a checking account that nobody touches, I guess you can just cancel it. But if the son or the daughter is tapping into those funds, yeah, that's where the crime would come in.
I'm afraid you're right, and I suspect that this kind of thing and things like it are going on all over the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean that's what they President Trump was reading a list of these things yesterday, and some of them are just absolutely incredible, like funding a opera somewhere. I mean, or I mean stuff like that. That you probably not a good idea for that kind of information to be coming out, Bill, when people are preparing their taxes.
Well, that's true. It's awfully discouraging, and I think it came out specifically because of that. And
Yeah.
I mean, there are leaks all over the place.
Right.
And there are plenty of people inside the United States government who know exactly what's been happening. And this is their time to become whistleblowers, um, which may not be the healthiest thing in Washington right now. I wouldn't want to identify myself as a whistleblower to my uh, possible future wife's father. What do you do, young man? Well, I'm a whistleblower, sir. You know, and I've got
Well,
I've got the armor vest to prove it.
right. No, you're right, but it is the amounts of money that we're talking about are mind-boggling. I mean, if we were talking about 1,000, I mean, just to think about it, if let's say we were talking about 1,000 cases of Social Security checks, you're talking about hundreds, maybe I don't know how many people get a check every year, maybe 20 or 30 million people. So you would expect, you would expect a few mistakes, data entry mistakes. That's what I would how I would describe them. When they're putting in the information, they could put in the wrong year or whatever.
Sure.
That okay, that can happen. But when you're talking about spending money in other countries and financing some of the things that we've been financing, it really you're sitting there and you're with your mouth open. You cannot believe what you're hearing, which then leads me to the next question, Bill. I want to get your reaction to this. The way that the Democrats are handling this is that instead of saying, you know what, Trump's got a point, maybe we should clean this up. What they're saying is, let's fight Trump.
That's exactly right.
Let's defend these programs because it's absolutely ridiculous, Bill.
Well, you're absolutely right. And in fact, one of the arguments the Democrats are giving for not even looking into this is that it will disrupt the fight against Trump. And so what they're basically saying is, oh, there's corruption, but it's kind of a good kind of corruption.
Right.
And if you stop that corruption, you'll get Trump's corruption.
Right.
Which would you rather have?
Right.
Trump's corruption or Biden's corruption? Maybe we should have a national referendum
on corruption. Let's see which one's better. But maybe we should have something like, what they're saying is, gee, if we help Trump put out this information, that's going to make Trump look good, and it's going to make Musk look good, and we don't want that. So anything for the sake of destroying Trump, I guess, is what they're saying.
I'm afraid it is.
Which is pretty incredible when you're talking about the health of the country here.
We're talking about the future of the country.
Yes.
And I think that I don't know yet what the public opinion polls show, because there are polls being taken right now, but they're being questioned. I mean, the people are accusing the pollsters of lying, of being in league, of getting some of the money themselves. Who knows? I mean, soon we might have Wendy's polls.
That's right. No, you're right. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But it does bring you back to the wisdom of having a small government.
Yes.
Because the only reason that these things can happen is because there's so much money. And when you have all this money, people are going to come up with ways of spending it. Mm-hmm. And my experience is that in the private sector, if you're working for a company and you can save the company, I mean, if you had a company or working for a company, let's say in the accounting department, you went to your boss and you said, hey, look, we're sending out all these dividend checks to people who are dead. That's not really in our interest.
No.
That fellow in the accounting department might end up getting a bonus for saving the company money.
Yeah, well, it should happen. I mean, there should be a reward for an employee if the employee lives a day. And believe me, that could happen also.
Right, but at least that is,
the owner is dangerous.
Sure, but at least the owner of the company would call this fellow in the accounting department and say, you know what, that's good. You're very smart for picking that up, and I really appreciate it. And I'm going to send you and your wife on a vacation or something.
Yes.
Or here's 100 or whatever. Go out to dinner with your wife. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that kind of efficiency is rewarded in the private sector, but it's the exact opposite in the public sector. I was listening to this lady on the radio, lady who is familiar with Washington. I don't remember exactly what her title was, but she was saying that in the public sector, if you don't use money, you lose it for
Yes,
next year.
win it or yes, spend it or lose it.
Yes,
That's the way they often calculate next year's budget. They will ask, well, how much money did you need last year? Well, we only needed 60% of what we were allocated. Okay, in that case, we're going to cut your budget for
right,
next year, and if you don't make your budget, they'll blame you.
right. But
So
that's it. But in the that is how the private sector works.
it is, yes,
In the
yes,
private sector, if you can be more efficient or save money, you're going to be rewarded, promoted. But in the public sector, if you try to save the company money, then like you say, make sure that you test whatever you're drinking or eating, because it may be your last meal.
yes.
And it's a shame, but that's what happens when you have these large bureaucracies. They
Absolutely. I mean, the fact is that in certain cities in the United States, you get rewarded for stealing the money, and if you catch the thief, you get thrown in a river. So,
No, I mean it is true. I mean it is true. I mean it's just crazy. But that's what I think creates the climate where something like this can happen. In other words, there was probably somebody in the Social Security Administration who said to somebody else, "Hey, I just noticed that we're sending out 1,000 checks to people who were living in the 19th century. Maybe we should check that date to make sure that it's correct." I'm sure there was somebody who saw that. But then the next person he was talking to said, "Hey, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter to you. We're going to get paid in 2 weeks no matter what happens." And I think that's the mindset of the public sector that creates this kind of inefficiency and potentially corruption, Bill.
oh yes, and what people don't realize is I think, many, I think, believe that public service workers are very poorly paid, barely making it by. As a matter of fact, the government pays very well, the federal government especially, and to a degree, they have to get the kind of talent that it takes to run the United States. So, but these are not small timers. The
No.
amount of money spent in this country every year, if they could get the graft out of it and the corruption and the waste, the American people could have a nice tax cut.
Well, and that's what I understand. That's what Trump wants to do.
Yes.
Turn this into a tax. But even here's the thing, Bill. Even if, and I'll just speak personally here, even if as a result of this we don't get a tax cut, let's say we save X amount of money, and I don't necessarily expect a tax cut. I wouldn't mind it if that was applied to the federal debt,
Yes.
because that is building up in a very dangerous way. Interest, debt service is now becoming, I think, the second item in the budget, and that's
Yeah.
dangerous. That is very dangerous when that
Oh,
happens.
extremely dangerous. The country just gets dragged down in interest payments.
Yes.
Its credit rating is hurt, and it has to pay those bills.
And that's what often happens, with individuals who do Chapter 7 bankruptcy. That's why they do it, because they
Yes.
simply have no way of coming out of the hole they're in. Now, you can do Chapter 7 bankruptcy if you're an individual. What does the country do? I guess they tell people that we're not going to pay our debts or reschedule their debts, or the IMF gets involved or something. But all of that could happen to the United States. We're not immune from that, Bill.
That's exactly right. It can happen, and it can happen in other ways. I mean, you can have a situation, for example, where money is not being stolen directly, but it is going to organizations that then dispense it to people that know who are going to steal it.
Well, I think, again, where there is so much money, temptation walks in.
Yes.
And when you combine all of this, too much money with a public sector union completely attached to one political party, the potential for corruption is very high. And I am happy as a citizen that President Trump is challenging this game. I'm happy that he's going in there and saying, "Hey, we're going to challenge this. We're going to challenge this bureaucracy, unaccountable to anybody." And I think it's about time somebody did that, Bill.
Of course, it's time, and what the Democrats, I think, now are hoping is that they can wait it out. You know, that they'll stall until the
The
19
midterms, the
the
midterms.
midterms rather, and that they can end this that way and just tie up the government. And they may be right because Trump is, he's not perfect. He's got good instincts, but he's been making some very foolish statements in foreign policy that are hurting him.
Right.
People are saying, "Oh, it's the old Trump again. We better watch him." And also, he only has a limited amount of time to fulfill his promises to families. You know, he made promises that we're going to get an economy that people can afford. We're going to get inflation out of the way. And these are not the things he's talking about. He's now talking about owning Canada. I wouldn't want to, but and those are never things he talked about during the campaign. But
Right.
he's only got a few months to show that he can produce for the people he pledged there would be a production.
Yeah, I would like to see inflation become a bigger part of his vocabulary because the Democrats are using that against him now. The Democrats have discovered inflation, and now they're using inflation against him, saying, "Well, no, everybody voted for to reduce inflation. Nobody voted to eliminate the USAID or something."
No.
And I mean, there is truth to that. Nobody was talking about the USID during the election, but they were talking about inflation. Now, the strategy that I understand that they're using is they're trying to get as much done by Memorial Day with this bill, the tax and all of
Yes.
that bill, which I
Either.
think it's the same thing Reagan did in 1981. If
Yeah.
you remember, he got everything done by the summer. And if you can do that, then at least you can have your plan in place. And let's see what happens in 26. Couple of other topics I want to get into, Bill. The vice president went to Europe and gave a speech that a lot of Europeans got very rattled about. But I thought he was right. I mean, the vice president was right in mentioning this, saying to them, "Hey guys, we cannot defend you forever. You got to spend more money, and you got to be more tolerant of free speech." I thought it was
Yes.
a message that was needed, Bill.
Absolutely. I have no idea what they're criticizing.
Well, they don't want to be criticized. What they're criticizing is, it's like when you tell your kid, hey, we tell your kid something that is obvious to them, but they don't like to be told.
Well, that's true, and Vance is not a particularly popular figure in Europe. I think in part because he's a religious man,
Right.
and that over there is, it's worse than being a bank thief. It's
Well, he shows up with his wife and 3 kids in a continent where there aren't any children. If you look at some of these
that's right.
brief, I mean, it's got to be really odd, to have an elected leader show up with his family, and such a cute family too, such a neat family.
It is.
I mean, she's going to be, if she's ever the first lady, Bill, she's going to be great because
I agree.
she just has a lot of class and so many good things about her that I think the American people would connect with. But Vance is turning out to be a lot better than I expected. I had no idea of what he was going to be. I knew he was the senator of Ohio and he was on the list of VPs, but I
Yes.
had no idea that he would turn out as good as this, Bill.
Yes. I didn't know much about him when he ran, except that he was an author. But and at first I was a little disappointed, but I think he's a wonderful speaker. I think he articulates his issues very, very well, and his wife is a star.
She is. She's not, and that little girl that they have,
Yes,
that keeps showing up everywhere. I mean, she's really cute. And the other day they show up in Paris or whatever. The kids are wearing pajamas and they have a winter coat over them. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that people like. At least I do. I mean, I think a lot of people like that family image,
Oh, and it's a wonderful family image. But I think that right now, he has got to suffer the fact that he's Trump's vice president.
That's right.
That's what's keeping him down in Europe.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about that. I mean, that is exactly right. One more point, Bill,
Sure.
and that is the future of the Democrat Party. It does not look to me like they're thinking about it, but they're not really thinking about it in the sense they're not coming up with any constructive ways of making themselves more electable. And one of the points that I wanted to bring up and get your reaction to this, they would be, I think, politically smarter. And we briefly touched on this before, but it would be very smart for the Democrats to say, hey, look, we don't like checks going out to people either who are dead or
Yeah.
are 200 years old. So we're going to participate with President Trump to clean this up. And essentially, you take the issue from him in a way.
Yeah.
You take the issue from
well,
him.
that's been suggested that they ought to start finding areas where they can work together,
Right.
and then the Democrats can say, "Well, we participated heavily on this, so
Right.
we're right up there with you, and we're a modern party." The trouble is, the next day, some other Democrat is going to say, "These are traitors," you
Right.
know? And
but here's the other benefit, Bill, of working together with President Trump. They might discover some things that help the. I mean, there may be some programs where that make the Republicans look bad.
oh, absolutely. That but then they are so rigid in their position that they don't see any opportunity in anything.
Right.
And they just say, give us power, give us the country back, because that is our rightful country, and we can deal with all these issues later.
Right. Yeah, they're saying we're living in occupied territory.
That's not awful. Yes, we've been occupied by our own people for a long time.
That's right. Yeah, we're in occupied lands. That's what they say in the Southwest over here. People who have lived here. In fact, it's hilarious because the people who say it are not even parts of the natives who were here. I mean, you get these European people who are here. Americans of European descent who come down here and say, we're living on occupied land. And you say to them, wait a minute, who occupied it? It was your ancestors who did it, So it's just absolutely crazy. Well, Bill, that's about it for this week. I know that you sound like you've been recovering there from a little bit of the winter stuff, but I want to wish you the best in your recovery. I have a little bit of I have a little bit of the same problem, but
yeah, I've been hearing it. Well, it'll take some time. Everyone says the same thing. It takes time. This is not a 2-day flu or something.
No. In fact, the flu around here in our area, the flu has been, knocking down people. There's a fellow at our church who plays the guitar, and a couple of weeks ago, I saw his wife, and I said, "Hey, where's Carlos?" And I said, "Where's Carlos? Is he traveling on business?" Because he travels on business. And she goes, "Oh no, he's in bed with the flu." So then I saw Carlos a little bit later, and I said, "Hey, Carlos, what happened?" And he said, "Well, I got this thing they call the flu, and I couldn't get out of bed. I was tired. I kept coughing. I went to the clinic. They gave me this. They gave me that. And, well, he got through it, but it was very frustrating."
Oh, very.
Which, of course, reminds me, Bill, my little story here. I got to put in a little story about my mother. When we first came to the United States, my mother didn't understand what the flu was. And so, she would hear people say, "What's wrong with me?" She would ask somebody, "What's wrong with you?" And they go, "Oh, he's got the flu." And, "Oh, the flu. What is the flu?" Well, it's, I guess it comes from the word influenza, but it's when people get sick. So my mother would get very frustrated because nobody could tell her what the flu was.
Yes.
Whether it was a cold or respiratory problem. Because everything was called the flu.
That's right. And I remember that period. The flu was kind of an all-encompassing word for any time somebody coughed and sneezed.
Right. So you go back to the late 60s when we got here. Every time somebody would get sick, anyway, they would say he's got the flu. So one day my mother said, "I wish somebody would come up with a medicine for the flu. Because if there was a medicine for the flu, there wouldn't be so many people sick with the flu, whatever it is."
Yes.
But anyway, it's just there's a lot of flu going around.
There
Let's say
sure
that.
is. There sure is. So go home and sleep.
Go home and sleep, or as they used to say in those commercials on TV that I remember, 2 aspirin and lots of water. Remember?
Oh yes. Oh,
Take two
absolutely.
aspirins and lots of water, and that's how you would recover from the flu. I
Yes.
don't know if they still say that,
Yes,
but
they do.
they do. Okay.
Mhm.
But now, of course, with so many different kinds of medicines that they have, maybe they say something else. But for a long time, that's what I remember on TV. Somebody would say, well, you take 2 aspirins and drink lots of water, and you're going to be just fine. And I guess, it did work because a lot of people did recover from it. But Bill, as always, it's a great pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. And I'm sure that next week you can tell us how that drama in New York ended.
Oh well, it's a lot of dramas going on. There's a lot coming up,
Okay.
including some very important confirmation hearings.
Yes, Mr. Patel, I guess, is coming up
Yes.
next. Yeah, and he should get in, but that was, they keep extending that longer and longer. I think they were trying to nail him, but it didn't work.
It didn't work. No,
It
not
didn't
so.
work.
Not so far. But
Not so far.
at any rate, talk to you next week.
Okay,
And
Bill, I hope you feel better, and thank you for your time.
you feel better also.
That's right. Both of us need to feel better.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Good
Thank you,
night,
Bill.
Silvio.
Good night. All right. Our good friend Bill Katz, the editor of Virgin Agenda, I always chat with him once a week. And yeah, I think both of us are fighting the flu or whatever they call it. And but we did talk about some interesting things today, and the drama in New York that Bill was referring to, in case you missed the earlier part of our conversation. This is the problem there between the governor and the mayor of New York City. A big problem going on. I guess the governor wants to replace the mayor. That's the drama. And is it going to happen? I don't know. And then, of course, Vice President Vance speaking in Europe. I thought it was a great speech, and I thought it was a message that had to be said, and he did a good job with it. So, anyway, thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye bye, everybody.